Jonas Harvey pushes his cleaning cart into the executive boardroom during a crucial meeting. CFO Richard Connell points and snickers. Janitors know their places after hours, not during million-dollar discussions. The room erupts in laughter as Richard mimics Jonas's walk. Maybe he thinks he's qualified to give financial advice. Jonas stands silently, dignity intact despite the mockery. CEO Victoria Walsh checks her watch impatiently. We're discussing the Westfield acquisition. Clear out your trash and yourself. More laughter. Jonas nods, seemingly compliant, then pulls out his phone. Actually, I'd like to discuss the acquisition too, specifically why it's about to fall apart. The executive's smiles freeze as Jonas pulls a folder from beneath his cleaning supplies. What would you do if someone humiliated you without knowing your true power? Comment below. Earlier that morning, Jonas Harvey arrives at Pinnacle Tech's gleaming headquarters in San Francisco. He adjusts his janitor's uniform, a far cry from the tailored suits that once defined his daily wardrobe. At 58, his salt and pepper hair and weathered hands complete the disguise perfectly. No one recognizes the man who built this company from nothing 3 decades ago. Jonas pushes his cart through the lobby, observing. His purpose is clear. Evaluate the company culture after disturbing reports reached him about toxic behavior. The majority shareholder has chosen invisibility to witness authenticity. Hey boy, missed a spot there, Richard Connell calls out as Jonas passes his office. The CFO's voice carries deliberately, drawing chuckles from passing executives. Jonas nods respectfully, saying nothing as he wipes the already clean floor. Throughout the morning, Richard and his executive clique continue their performance. They drop papers deliberately for Jonas to collect. They refer to him as the help within earshot. One executive spills coffee and watches Jonas clean it, remarking, "That's why you stay in school, folks." Victoria Walsh, the CEO, witnesses one such incident while walking to a meeting. Her lips tighten disapprovingly, but she says nothing, continuing her conversation without interruption. Her silence speaks volumes. During lunch, Jonas positions himself near the executive dining area, emptying trash bins while Richard holds court. Once we absorb Westfield, first order of business is stripping those ridiculous diversity programs, Richard announces to appreciative nods. That woke nonsense cuts into profits. Their minority hiring quotas will be the first to go. Victoria shifts uncomfortably but raises no objection. From across the room, Diane Rodriguez, the HR director, watches the scene with narrowed eyes. She notes something in her tablet, then glances at Jonas with unusual intensity. Their eyes meet briefly, hers calculating, his revealing nothing. She suspects. Jonas steps into an empty stairwell, phone in hand. "Eleanor, it's worse than we thought. Prepare the documents." The boardroom gleams with afternoon sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. 12 executives surround the polished mahogany table, reviewing acquisition documents as Jonas enters pushing his cleaning cart. He keeps his head down, methodically emptying small trash bins while the meeting proceeds. "Westfield's technology is solid but overvalued." Richard Connell gestures to the projection screen displaying financial charts. Their diversity initiatives alone cost nearly $3 million annually. Pure waste will eliminate post-acquisition. Victoria nods thoughtfully. Their customer base is quite loyal to their corporate values. We should consider transition optics carefully. Richard dismisses this with a wave. Customers care about products, not politics. They'll forget within a quarter. Jonas moves steadily around the room, a silent observer cataloging every word. Richard drops a crumpled paper on the floor rather than the bin beside him, smirking at a colleague. "Third quarter projections show immediate 15% growth once we streamline their bloated HR department," Richard continues. Jonas reaches for the paper, accidentally bumping Richard's chair. "Jesus!" Richard explodes, spinning around. "Can't you do anything right? This is why people like you push brooms instead of making decisions." The room falls silent. Jonas straightens, dignity intact despite the flush creeping up his neck. "I apologize, sir," he says quietly. Victoria glances at her watch. Perhaps maintenance could return after our meeting concludes. Diane Rodriguez, seated at the far end, clears her throat. Perhaps we could show more respect to all staff members. Our company values state HR should focus on real issues, not janitor feelings, Richard interrupts. We're discussing a $200 million acquisition. Jonas continues his rounds, now hyper-aware of the executive's reactions. Some shift uncomfortably. Others smirk in solidarity with Richard. Most simply pretend nothing happened. The worst response of all. Richard returns to his presentation, unaware that Jonas catches 3 critical errors in his financial projections. The janitor's eyebrow raises slightly at a particularly egregious miscalculation. Diane notices this subtle reaction, her eyes narrowing thoughtfully. As Jonas turns to leave, cart nearly at the door, Richard calls out, "Hey janitor, before you go, want to give us your expert opinion on our $200 million deal?" Several executives chuckle as Jonas slowly turns, his expression unreadable beneath carefully cultivated submission. "Come on over," Richard beckons Jonas with an exaggerated wave. "Since diversity is so important these days, let's hear the janitor's perspective." The room's atmosphere shifts. Some executives laugh nervously while others join Richard's mockery with enthusiastic grins. Jonas stands motionless, cart handle still in his grip. "Don't be shy," Richard continues. "We value all voices here at Pinnacle. Isn't that right, Diane?" He winks at the HR director, whose jaw tightens visibly. Jonas releases his cart and approaches the table with measured steps. His posture remains erect, despite the weight of derision pressing down on him. Outside the glass walls, employees pass by, some slowing to observe the unusual scene, a maintenance worker standing at the executive table. "Right here," Richard pats the space beside him. "Best view of our brilliant strategy." Jonas positions himself where indicated. The projector's light illuminates his face, revealing nothing but patient dignity. "These," Richard gestures grandly at complex financial projections, "are what we call P&L forecasts. That's profit and loss for those who haven't been to business school." Several executives snicker. The blue lines represent revenue growth after acquisition. Red indicates cost reduction through elimination of redundancies, like unnecessary staff and programs. Jonas studies the charts silently. "Too complicated?" Richard's voice drips with condescension. "Maybe stick to which mop works best for coffee stains." Victoria finally interjects. "That's enough, Richard. We should continue with—" "Just having some fun with our cleaning staff," Richard interrupts, placing his hand on Jonas's shoulder. "He doesn't mind, do you? Probably the most interesting part of your day, seeing how the important half lives." The humiliation is methodical, designed to entertain at Jonas's expense. Yet as Jonas absorbs each barb, his eyes scan the projections with practiced precision. He identifies 3 fatal flaws that would doom the acquisition: overvalued synergies, underestimated integration costs, and a complete misunderstanding of Westfield's debt restructuring. Diane types rapidly into her tablet, her documentation appearing as meeting notes to casual observers. Through the glass walls, 2 black analysts exchange glances of shared discomfort, their own experiences reflected in Jonas's public degradation. After enduring several minutes of mockery, Jonas speaks. "Your projections fail to account for Westfield's debt restructuring last quarter." The room falls silent. Richard recovers first, laughing too loudly. "Impressive guess. Maybe you've been reading the Wall Street Journal during your breaks." He turns to the room. "Now, back to actual business. And you, back to your real job." Jonas returns to his cart without another word. As he passes Diane's chair, he slips a business card into her folder that reads only, "Majority shareholder, Jonas Harvey." Diane's eyes widen as she reads the card, her fingers closing around it before anyone else notices. The utility closet door clicks shut behind Jonas. In this cramped sanctuary of mops and cleaning supplies, his janitor's facade momentarily slips. He leans against metal shelving, exhaling slowly through clenched teeth. His hands, capable hands that built a tech empire tremble slightly before forming resolute fists. Memories surface unbidden. A younger Jonas being told to use the service elevator despite his executive position. Investors assuming he was the help at his own funding presentation. The constant need to prove himself twice as qualified, 3 times as dedicated. He'd thought things had changed, that stepping back from daily operations would allow the company culture to evolve naturally. He was wrong. Jonas straightens his uniform, retrieving his personal phone from a hidden pocket. He calls Eleanor Chen, his lawyer of 20 years. "Eleanor, I've seen enough." His voice transforms, authoritative, commanding, nothing like the deferential tone he's used all day. "Prepare for emergency board action. I want all discrimination reports from the last 5 years on my desk tomorrow. Complete financial audits. The succession plan." "Jonas," Eleanor's voice carries concern, "you promised not to interfere unless absolutely necessary. You wanted authentic leadership to develop without—" "It's necessary," Jonas interrupts. "What I've witnessed today violates everything this company was built to stand for." A soft knock interrupts. Jonas ends the call, resuming his janitor persona as the door opens to reveal Diane Rodriguez. "I knew something was different about you," she says, closing the door behind her. "The way you noticed those projection errors. No ordinary maintenance worker catches financial discrepancies that specific." She produces his business card. "I've been documenting everything for months. Harassment complaints buried. Promotions denied to qualified minorities. Retribution against those who speak up." Diane retrieves her tablet, showing Jonas extensive evidence. Emails, performance reviews manipulated to justify passing over minority candidates, recorded incidents categorized by severity and pattern. "Why hasn't Victoria addressed this?" Jonas asks. "She tried initially," Diane reveals. "Richard threatened her with fabricated misconduct allegations, claimed he had board members who would corroborate. She chose self-preservation over doing right." Understanding dawns in Jonas's eyes. "The board's been captured." "Most of them," Diane confirms. "Richard's built a coalition of loyalty through favors, threats, and profitable arrangements." Jonas nods, decision crystallizing. "I built this company on inclusion and innovation, principles that made us successful. What I've seen today ends now." He turns to Diane. "Gather allies quietly. I'll handle the rest." Across the building, Richard enters his private office, frowning. He calls a colleague. "That janitor seemed too interested in our numbers. Run a background check. Something feels off." In his car, Jonas changes from janitor uniform to impeccable suit, while his phone flashes. "Westfield CEO expresses last-minute concerns about Pinnacle acquisition." The analytics department buzzes with tense energy. James Wright, a young black analyst recently promoted from the data team, points to discrepancies in the acquisition projections. These synergy estimates seem optimistic considering Westfield's market position. Richard Connell looms over James's desk, face flushing. "Are you questioning my financial assessment, Wright?" "Just highlighting potential risks, sir," James responds, voice steady despite the attention from surrounding colleagues. Richard snatches the report from James's hands. "Maybe you should join the janitorial staff if you can't understand basic financials. Your promotion was clearly premature." Victoria witnesses this from the department entrance. She steps forward, then hesitates, conflict evident in her expression. "Let's stay professional, Richard. The team is just doing due diligence." Her weak intervention draws Richard's contemptuous glance before he drops the report on James's desk. "Fix your understanding, not my numbers." He storms off, leaving Victoria standing awkwardly before she retreats without further comment. Meanwhile, Jonas, still in his janitor disguise, pushes his cart past the executive suite where Diane conducts a clandestine meeting. Inside, 5 employees from different departments share experiences. "He said my accent was too ethnic for client calls," a marketing manager reveals. "My promotion was delayed 3 times while my white colleague with less experience advanced," adds a senior developer. Diane documents each account, building a comprehensive pattern of behavior. Has anyone reported these incidents formally? They exchange knowing looks. Those who did suddenly received poor performance reviews, the developer explains. 2 eventually left the company. Across the building, Richard reviews security logs on his computer. His brow furrows as he discovers the cleaning company has no janitor scheduled for their floor today. He picks up his phone. Security? I need you to locate an unauthorized individual. Older black male, maintenance uniform, currently in the building. Richard keeps his voice low. Find him discreetly. No need to alarm the board yet. In the break room, Jonas engages a mid-level manager while refilling paper towels. Heard there's concern about the Westfield acquisition, he mentions casually. Between us? The manager glances around. Their corporate culture is nothing like ours. Richard's integration plan ignores significant compatibility issues. Jonas nods sympathetically. Sounds like trouble. If someone examined their diversity initiatives versus our track record, they'd find major red flags, the manager continues, clearly relieved to voice concerns. In her office, Victoria frantically answers her phone. Mr. Westfield, I assure you our commitment to your company's values. She pauses, listening. What anonymous concerns? I don't understand. She paces nervously. The acquisition timeline remains in our mutual interest. Any delay could affect market perception. Another pause. Yes, I'll address these issues personally. Thank you for bringing them to my attention. Victoria hangs up, immediately dialing Richard. We have a problem. Someone's sabotaging the deal. Security footage of Jonas in his janitor disguise appears on Richard's phone with a message. Unscheduled personnel. Identity unknown. This stays between us. Richard addresses the hastily assembled executive team in the small conference room. Victoria's conspicuous absence hangs in the air. We have a security situation that threatens the Westfield acquisition. He displays the security image on the screen. This individual entered our building using maintenance credentials, but he's not employed by our cleaning service. Murmurs ripple through the room as executives recognize the janitor from the boardroom incident. Corporate espionage? Asks the chief technology officer. Richard nods gravely. That janitor wasn't just nosy, he wasn't ours. His interest in our acquisition projections suggests he's gathering intelligence, possibly for a competitor. He doesn't mention his humiliation of the man, conveniently editing those details from his narrative. Across town, Jonas sits across from Gerald Westfield in a private dining room. Gone is the janitor's uniform, replaced by a bespoke suit that commands respect. The Westfield CEO studies Jonas with newfound understanding. When my assistant said Jonas Harvey wanted to meet, I almost didn't believe it, Gerald admits. The founder emeritus, back from the shadows. Jonas sips his water. I never truly left, Gerald. I merely stepped back to allow new leadership to flourish without my shadow. Unfortunately, that experiment has produced concerning results. The anonymous concerns about Pinnacle's culture were mine, Jonas confirms. After observing firsthand how Richard Connell conducts business, I cannot in good conscience allow your company, with its exemplary diversity initiatives and innovative culture, to be dismantled by his leadership. Gerald leans forward. You're the majority shareholder. Why not simply remove him? Corporate governance requires due process. But more importantly, Jonas's eyes sharpen, I needed incontrovertible evidence of the systemic issues. My janitor persona provided that. Back at Pinnacle, Victoria storms into Richard's office. You called an executive meeting without me? I'm the CEO, Richard. A time-sensitive security matter, he dismisses. Besides, you were occupied with damage control. Westfield is threatening to walk away, Victoria's voice rises uncharacteristically. Your behavior in that boardroom yesterday, humiliating staff in front of others. That maintenance worker, please. Richard scoffs. Your soft touch is why we're facing resistance. Westfield will sign because they need our distribution channels more than we need their boutique operation. Victoria stands taller. Your actions might have cost us everything. They'll sign, Richard repeats coldly. Now leave the security breach to me while you do your actual job. In a conference room several floors below, Diane meets with her growing coalition. We have testimonials from 23 current employees and 17 former staff members who left due to hostile conditions. She displays the structured report on her laptop. All corroborate a pattern of discrimination that intensified under Richard's financial leadership. Meanwhile, Richard hunches over his computer, scrolling through investment records. His expression darkens as he discovers Jonas Harvey's name. He's an investor, he mutters, misinterpreting the records that deliberately obscure Jonas's majority stake through various holding companies. He reaches for his phone. Security, I want Jonas Harvey banned from this building immediately. In the boardroom, tension divides the executives. The chief marketing officer speaks hesitantly. Perhaps we should re-examine our approach to the Westfield integration. Their corporate culture is irrelevant, interrupts Richard's ally from legal. We're acquiring their technology and market share, not their HR policies. The division is palpable, factions forming along lines of values versus pure profit motive. Victoria's phone buzzes with a text message from an unknown number. Emergency board meeting tomorrow. Your career depends on which side you choose. She stares at the sender information, Jonas Harvey, as the weight of the imminent confrontation settles on her shoulders. Morning light bathes Pinnacle's headquarters as employees notice unusual activity. Security personnel position themselves discreetly at key points throughout the building. Executive assistants whisper about an unscheduled board meeting. Something significant approaches. Richard Connell strides through the marketing department, projecting confidence he doesn't entirely feel. He stops at Zoe Patterson's desk, a talented black woman repeatedly passed over for promotion. Zoe, his smile doesn't reach his eyes. Good news. That senior position you interviewed for last quarter? It's yours effective immediately. She looks up, surprised. Thank you, but what changed since my last review? Just recognizing talent. Richard places a document on her desk. Sign by end of day. He lowers his voice. Between us, there may be some troublemakers spreading misinformation about our company culture. Your perspective as a valued minority employee would be helpful in correcting that narrative. Zoe's expression remains carefully neutral. I see. Similar scenes repeat across departments as Richard strategically promotes previously overlooked minority employees while implying consequences for speaking against him. Meanwhile, Victoria secures an empty office for a clandestine meeting with Diane Rodriguez. Why didn't you come to me sooner with this? Victoria gestures at the documentation displayed on Diane's tablet. Diane pulls up an email folder labeled CEO Communications. I did. 3 times. Your assistant, appointed by Richard, said you were too busy. Then my concerns were mysteriously reclassified as low priority. Victoria's face falls as she scrolls through evidence of her own complicity through inaction. I knew things were problematic, but this systematic pattern... Richard created a culture of fear, Diane explains. Most victims stay silent, knowing what happens to those who speak up. Across town, Jonas and Eleanor review company bylaws in her law office. Richard violated at least 15 policies, Eleanor confirms. Discrimination, harassment, creating a hostile work environment, misrepresentation to the board regarding diversity initiatives. The board can't ignore this, Jonas states. Some will try, Eleanor warns. Richard's cultivated allies through favors and shared interests. They'll claim it's just his management style. Jonas straightens his tie. Then they'll share his fate. In his office, Richard makes frantic calls. I need your vote tomorrow. Yes, I understand your concerns, but this is an attempted hostile takeover. No, he doesn't have majority control. That's absurd. His confidence wavers as he counts potential allies. The coalition he thought solid now shows concerning cracks. He accesses Jonas's investor profile again, digging deeper into ownership structures. His face pales as he discovers connections to holding companies he previously overlooked. Throughout the building, employees share whispers about the janitor incident. Customer service representative Thomas Chen tells colleagues in the break room, "My cousin works at Westfield. Says their CEO pulled back from the acquisition after an anonymous tip about Pinnacle's toxic environment." About time someone exposed what happens here. Another employee responds, voice low. The Westfield CEO appears on financial news, diplomatically addressing speculation. "We're simply conducting additional due diligence regarding cultural alignment. Strong corporate values have always been Westfield's foundation." Pinnacle's stock dips 3% in response. As afternoon approaches, board members arrive earlier than usual, gathering in small clusters outside the main boardroom. Their hushed conversations cease when Richard appears, his typical swagger diminished by uncertainty. "What exactly is this emergency meeting about?" demands a long-serving board member. "A former executive attempting to undermine our acquisition strategy," Richard replies, not meeting her eyes directly. "Nothing we can't handle." The elevator opens, revealing Jonas Harvey in an impeccable charcoal suit, his bearing regal and commanding, nothing like the janitor they'd mocked. The board members stare in stunned recognition as he approaches. Security moves to intercept Jonas, but freeze when Victoria emerges from her office with 4 words. "Let him pass, immediately." "The Westfield acquisition represents our strategic direction for the next decade." Richard gestures confidently despite the tension in the room. "These baseless discrimination claims are clearly designed to derail our momentum." The boardroom door opens. Jonas Harvey enters with measured steps, followed closely by Eleanor Chen carrying a leather portfolio. The room falls silent as recognition dawns on faces that days earlier had laughed at the janitor now standing before them in bespoke Italian wool. "Mr. Harvey is not authorized to attend this meeting." Richard recovers first, signaling security. "Please remove him." "That won't be necessary," Jonas states calmly, placing documents on the table. "As 67% shareholder and founder of Pinnacle Tech, I believe I have a seat." Shock ripples through the room. Board members exchange glances, calculating allegiances in real time. "Impossible," Richard scoffs, though uncertainty creeps into his voice. "Our ownership records don't show—" "My holdings are structured through 7 entities," Jonas interrupts, sliding ownership certificates across the table. "A privacy measure, not secrecy. The board secretary has always had access to the complete records." The secretary nods confirmation, unable to meet Richard's accusing glare. "For those who don't know me," Jonas continues, unbuttoning his jacket as he takes the empty chair at the head of the table, "I'm Jonas Harvey. I built this company from nothing 30 years ago when investors told me a black man couldn't succeed in tech." His voice carries no bitterness, only historical fact. "I stepped back from daily operations a decade ago, believing Pinnacle could thrive without my visible presence." He surveys the room. "I was wrong." "This is absurd," Richard attempts to regain control. "You can't just waltz in after years of absence and—" "I can and I have," Jonas interrupts. He activates the room's display system. Video begins playing. Richard mocking Jonas in his janitor disguise, berating minority employees, explicitly stating plans to dismantle Westfield's diversity initiatives. 3 days ago, I began an undercover evaluation following numerous complaints about hostile workplace practices, Jonas explains as the footage plays. "What I witnessed was a systematic dismantling of the inclusive culture that made Pinnacle successful." Board members shift uncomfortably as their own silent complicity appears in several clips. "You recorded us without consent?" Richard protests. "That's illegal. California is a 2-party consent state for private conversations," Eleanor interjects smoothly. "However, company policy explicitly states that all common areas are subject to monitoring for security purposes. Every employee, including executives, acknowledges this annually." Diane Rodriguez enters with a tablet and stack of folders. "We've compiled evidence from 78 incidents over the past 3 years," she announces, distributing materials. "These include testimonials from current and former employees experiencing discrimination, internal communications revealing deliberate suppression of diversity initiatives, and statistical analysis showing systematic bias in promotion patterns. On the video conference screen, faces appear, former employees sharing experiences and recorded statements. "I was told my natural hair was unprofessional," states a former marketing director. "After raising concerns about offensive comments, my performance reviews suddenly declined," reports a senior developer. "My technical suggestions were ignored until white male colleagues repeated them," adds a female engineer. The evidence mounts, incontrovertible and damning. Victoria Walsh rises slowly, all eyes turning to her. The CEO must choose sides publicly. She falters, then straightens. "I failed this company and its people. I witnessed inappropriate behavior and chose comfortable silence over difficult action." Her voice strengthens. "I was complicit through inaction, and I accept full responsibility for that failure." Jonas acknowledges her honesty with a slight nod before addressing the room. Effective immediately, Richard Connell is terminated for creating a hostile work environment, discriminatory practices, and actions contrary to shareholder interests. "You can't," Richard begins. "I can and I have," Jonas repeats. "The executive team will undergo immediate restructuring. A comprehensive culture reform begins today. The Westfield acquisition will proceed only with their diversity initiatives enhanced, not eliminated." Richard stands, desperate. "You're making a catastrophic mistake. Our share price will plummet. I know things about our operations, security vulnerabilities, accounting practices, that could devastate this company if made public." The room goes still at the naked threat. Jonas remains unperturbed. "That would violate your NDA and result in criminal charges for securities fraud and corporate espionage." His voice carries deadly calm. "Choose your next move carefully, Richard. Your remaining options narrow by the second." Security personnel approach at Eleanor's signal. Richard snatches his phone and laptop, glaring at each board member in turn. "You're choosing social justice fantasies over shareholder value," he spits. "This company won't survive what's coming when the market learns the founder has gone woke." "The market," Jonas responds evenly, "will learn that Pinnacle is recommitting to the principles that built our success. Innovation driven by diverse perspectives and ethical leadership." As security escorts Richard out, he turns back with a venomous glare. "This isn't over. Your precious company won't survive what's coming." The door closes behind Richard, but his threat lingers in the air like smoke, acrid and ominous. Transformation sweeps through Pinnacle Tech with the force of long-suppressed justice finally unleashed. The board meeting extends for hours as Jonas methodically rebuilds the company's leadership structure and priorities. Diane Rodriguez is appointed Chief Diversity Officer with full board voting rights, Jonas announces. Her first task: comprehensive audit of all promotion and compensation practices across departments. Several executives shift uncomfortably. 2 submit immediate resignations rather than face investigation. "We accept both resignations," Jonas states without hesitation. "However, your departure does not exempt you from the forthcoming legal review." By afternoon, the executive floor transforms into a command center for corporate rehabilitation. HR teams conduct departmental assessments, while legal teams review past settlements for discriminatory practices. The energy is simultaneously anxious and hopeful, like a patient awakening after necessary surgery. Victoria occupies a corner office, diminished but not removed. "Your honesty saved your position," Jonas informs her. "Temporarily. Your actions moving forward determine your future." She nods, understanding the conditional reprieve. "I'll earn back trust or step aside entirely." Despite attempts at discretion, news travels fast in the tech world. By evening, industry blogs post speculative headlines. "Major shakeup at Pinnacle Tech," and "CFO Connell exits amid rumors of cultural turmoil." By morning, mainstream business media catches the story. Undercover boss takes down toxic leadership, splashes across financial news channels. Billionaire founder returns as janitor, exposes discrimination trends on social platforms. Jonas grants no interviews, focusing instead on internal healing. His statement remains simple. Pinnacle Tech is recommitting to its founding principles of innovation through inclusion. Throughout the building, employee reactions create a complex emotional tapestry. Relief from those who suffered under Richard's regime mingles with anxiety from those who benefited from the old system. Uncertainty about the future pervades every conversation. James Wright, the analyst Richard berated, finds a note on his desk inviting him to present his acquisition concerns directly to Jonas. Your insights were correct, it reads. We need that perspective at leadership levels. Zoe Patterson returns her unsigned promotion document to HR. I want advancement based on merit, not damage control, she explains to Diane, who notes this act of integrity. In the legal department, settlement packages materialize for former employees who experienced discrimination. The agreements notably lack non-disclosure requirements, transparency replacing the culture of secrecy. Richard, meanwhile, retreats to his Atherton mansion, but not into silence. He works phones relentlessly, attempting to rally supporters. Harvey's destroying shareholder value with these woke policies, he argues to a former board ally. The market will punish this social justice experiment. Few publicly align with him as evidence mounts. Financial journalists obtain redacted copies of the discrimination documentation, creating a comprehensive timeline of institutional failure. Industry analysts begin questioning other tech companies about their diversity metrics, creating ripple effects throughout Silicon Valley. Victoria proves surprisingly valuable during transition, providing candid assessments of the executive team. Jenkins enabled Richard's worst behaviors, she reveals. Chen objected once, but was silenced. Williams consistently advocated for better practices despite Richard's opposition. Jonas receives daily market reports showing initial volatility. Pinnacle stock drops 7%, then stabilizes as he outlines his vision in a shareholder letter. Inclusive culture directly correlates with innovation outcomes and sustainable growth. We are correcting course to align with empirical best practices and our founding values. Institutional investors signal support after private briefings detail the liability risks Richard's leadership had created. Addressing these issues proactively minimizes long-term exposure, notes a major pension fund manager. The temporary disruption is preferable to class action litigation. Gerald Westfield arrives personally for acquisition renegotiations, sitting across from Jonas in the same boardroom where the janitor had been mocked days earlier. Your undercover approach was unorthodox but effective, Gerald observes. Sometimes transformation requires first-hand understanding, Jonas responds. Our companies share fundamental values that Connell would have destroyed. The acquisition should enhance those values, not eliminate them. They restructure the deal to preserve and expand Westfield's diversity initiatives post-merger. The revised agreement includes quantifiable inclusion metrics tied to executive compensation, accountability built into governance. Throughout the building, physical spaces transform alongside policies. The executive floor's restricted access opens, creating literal transparency. HR launches anonymous reporting systems with external oversight. Employee resource groups receive formal recognition and funding. Jonas establishes a review board including both executives and lower-level employees, all with equal voting power on cultural matters. Hierarchy has value for operational efficiency, he explains, but toxic culture flourishes when power concentrates without accountability. Victoria testifies in internal proceedings against Richard's practices, providing crucial documentation of his threats against those who challenged him. He created an ecosystem where complicity became the path of least resistance, she acknowledges. I failed by choosing that path. 3 weeks into the transformation, market analysts upgrade Pinnacle's rating from hold to buy, citing reduced legal exposure and improved innovation potential. The stock recovers its losses and adds 2% growth. Diane implements quarterly culture audits that become discussion points in earnings calls. Metrics, as important as financial performance. Culture is a leading indicator, Jonas explains to investors. Financial results are lagging indicators of cultural health. Former employees return, bringing valuable skills and experiences from competitors. The exodus of talent was our greatest invisible cost, Jonas notes during an executive meeting. Their return signals our recovery. Richard's public support continues eroding as more former employees speak out. His attorney advises against litigation, knowing discovery would further damage his reputation. His substantial stock holdings in Pinnacle maintain his wealth, but his industry influence wanes daily. Zoe Patterson receives her promotion through proper channels, based on documented performance excellence. James Wright joins the strategy team, his analytical insights valued rather than suppressed. Throughout Pinnacle, similar corrections occur, Merit finally operating without bias. The press eventually loses interest in the internal transformation, moving to newer scandals at other companies. This media reprieve allows deeper healing within Pinnacle's culture, away from public scrutiny. On a rain-slicked evening 6 weeks after the boardroom confrontation, a security camera captures Richard entering the headquarters of Pinnacle's largest competitor. The footage reaches Jonas's desk within hours. He's offering insider information, Eleanor confirms after activating their legal intelligence network, attempting to exchange knowledge for a leadership position. Document everything, Jonas instructs. His NDA makes any such disclosure actionable. As Jonas works late that evening, reviewing cultural transformation metrics in what was once Richard's office, he notices a janitor emptying trash bins, a young black man with a graduate degree in computer science according to the new employee database Jonas had specifically reviewed. The executive floor looks much better now, Jonas comments. The janitor looks up, surprised at being addressed directly. Just doing my job, sir. Your resume mentions a master's in computer science. Any interest in our engineering department? The young man's eyes widen. Absolutely, but HR said there weren't openings when I applied. There are now, Jonas hands him a card. Call this number tomorrow. As Richard is spotted meeting with executives from Pinnacle's largest competitor, his expression carries vindictive determination. They thought I was finished? I'm just getting started. The competitor's CEO leans forward with calculated interest. Tell me exactly what vulnerabilities we can exploit in Harvey's new regime. The California Tech Ethics Commission convenes in a sunlit chamber that feels more like a courtroom than a hearing room. Richard Connell sits stiffly beside his attorney, watching industry representatives and legal counsel file in. The formal proceedings begin with clinical precision. This hearing will determine whether Mr. Connell violated industry standards and ethical codes through his actions at Pinnacle Tech, announces Commissioner Ortega, her voice carrying throughout the room. Richard projects confidence despite the perspiration beading at his temples. His strategy is clear. Frame everything as business necessity rather than discrimination. Mr. Connell, how do you respond to documented incidents of creating a hostile work environment for minority employees? Commissioner Ortega begins. These allegations represent a fundamental misunderstanding of my management style. Richard replies smoothly. I hold all employees to exceptionally high standards. That some interpreted this as hostility reflects their performance issues, not discriminatory intent. His attorney nods approvingly, but the commissioner's expressions remain impassive. Evidence mounts methodically. Emails where Richard explicitly directs hiring managers to find cultural fit candidates, a documented code for maintaining homogeneity. Text messages mocking diversity initiatives as quota filling. Recorded conversations where he discusses ways to legally terminate employees who raised discrimination concerns. Richard's former allies, executives who once laughed at his jokes and supported his decisions, now distance themselves through careful testimony. While I observed Mr. Connell's management decisions, I was not privy to his intentions, states the former COO, carefully non-committal. I raised concerns through appropriate channels, claims another executive, though documentation shows otherwise. No one lies explicitly, but no one defends him either. Richard's isolation grows palpable as the hearing progresses. When Victoria Walsh testifies, Richard's confidence visibly falters. Mr. Connell explicitly threatened to fabricate misconduct allegations against me if I intervened in his treatment of minority employees, Victoria states, voice steady. He claimed to have board members who would corroborate false accusations, effectively ensuring my termination if I challenged him. That's absurd, Richard interrupts. She was CEO. Ultimate responsibility was hers. Mr. Connell, you'll have your opportunity to respond, Commissioner Ortega warns. Victoria presents documented evidence, saved emails, recorded conversations, contemporaneous notes, creating an undeniable pattern of intimidation and manipulation. Richard's final defense strategy emerges during cross-examination, shareholder value above all. Every decision I made maximized financial performance, he insists. That's my fiduciary responsibility. These so-called discriminatory practices were simply efficient business operations without unnecessary social engineering. Jonas Harvey, who has observed silently until now, approaches the witness table. He places a bound report before the commissioners. This analysis compares financial performance across tech companies with various diversity metrics, Jonas explains. The data demonstrates that inclusive workplaces consistently outperform homogeneous environments in innovation output, talent retention, and long-term market value. He turns to Richard. Your practices didn't maximize shareholder value, they actively damaged it while creating legal and reputational liability. Richard's facade finally cracks. You've turned Pinnacle into a social justice experiment. The market will punish your weakness. The market has already rendered its verdict, Jonas responds evenly. Pinnacle stock has risen 12% since your departure, outperforming the tech sector by 7 points. The commissioners need little deliberation. Their verdict is unanimous. Richard Connell violated multiple industry ethics standards. They revoke his executive certifications and refer evidence to the district attorney for potential criminal charges related to creating a hostile work environment. Richard departs in disgrace, his reputation destroyed. Legal teams have already negotiated settlements preventing him from executive roles at public companies for 5 years. As he exits the building, he passes a young black man in a crisp suit entering for the afternoon session. "Excuse me," Richard mutters automatically, not making eye contact. "No problem, Mr. Connell," responds Jamal Washington, the former janitor whom Richard had denied a management position despite his MBA. "I'm testifying about my experiences at Pinnacle this afternoon." Recognition dawns in Richard's eyes as Jamal continues into the building, head high, ready to contribute to the formal record of systemic failure that ended Richard's career. 3 months later, Jonas receives an unmarked envelope containing detailed discrimination documentation from 5 other major tech companies with a handwritten note. This was never just about Pinnacle, was it? Silicon Valley's landscape shifts with subtle but profound aftershocks from the Pinnacle revelation. Executive recruiters report unprecedented demand for diversity officers with actual authority rather than symbolic titles. Board meetings across the industry suddenly feature pointed questions about workplace culture metrics alongside financial projections. Jonas establishes the Tech Equity Coalition, bringing together former victims of discrimination who now lead the initiative with unique insight. Their first conference sells out in hours, CEOs and HR directors flocking to sessions titled Measuring What Matters, Culture as Competitive Advantage, and From Compliance to Commitment, Authentic Inclusion Strategies. "We're not here to shame companies," Jonas clarifies in his opening address. "We're here to share empirical evidence that inclusive workplaces outperform their peers on every meaningful metric." The coalition publishes case studies using Pinnacle's transformation as their central example. The data speaks volumes. Innovation output increased 23% in the first 6 months after Richard's departure. Employee retention improved 31%, significantly reducing costly turnover. Customer satisfaction scores reached all-time highs. Victoria Walsh, partially redeemed through her later actions and honest testimony, becomes an unexpected voice for accountability. She speaks candidly at industry conferences about leadership's responsibility. "Silence isn't neutrality, it's complicity," she tells a packed audience of executives. "I chose comfort over courage. and that choice enabled harm. Don't make my mistake. Competitors who initially celebrated Pinnacle's disruption soon face their own reckonings. Anonymous tips to tech journalists reveal similar discriminatory patterns throughout the industry. Companies initiate internal audits proactively, hoping to address issues before becoming the next headline. The Westfield acquisition completes successfully under the restructured terms, creating a new corporate model combining profitability with inclusive practices. Their joint stock value increases 23% within 6 months, outperforming the Nasdaq index by 11 points. Richard attempts to secure positions at 3 different companies, leveraging old connections and promising exceptional returns. Each time, background checks and heightened sensitivity to discrimination liability lead to quietly withdrawn offers. His lawsuit against Pinnacle for wrongful termination is dismissed with prejudice, the judge citing overwhelming evidence of misconduct. Congressional hearings on tech industry practices suddenly feature questions about corporate culture alongside traditional antitrust concerns. Jonas testifies about the business costs of discrimination. Beyond the moral imperative, he explains to legislators, discriminatory environments produce measurably inferior results. They sacrifice talent, suppress innovation, and create unnecessary legal exposure, all factors that damage shareholder value and economic competitiveness. New regulations emerge requiring transparency in promotion practices and demographic representation across leadership levels. Companies must now report not just raw diversity numbers, but advancement rates and compensation equity metrics. At Pinnacle, Diane Rodriguez implements quarterly culture audits that become industry standard. Her methodology, combining anonymous feedback, advancement metrics, and incident reporting, provides early warning indicators of potential issues before they become systemic. Employee satisfaction reaches unprecedented levels as people experience authentic inclusion rather than performative diversity. Zoe Patterson leads a product team that delivers Pinnacle's most successful launch in 5 years. James Wright's financial models, once dismissed by Richard, now guide strategic planning with remarkable accuracy. Throughout Silicon Valley, similar transformations unfold with varying degrees of commitment. Some companies embrace change enthusiastically, recognizing competitive advantage. Others comply reluctantly, doing the minimum necessary to avoid scrutiny. The difference in outcomes becomes increasingly apparent in talent attraction and market performance. Jonas observes these industry shifts with measured satisfaction. The work remains incomplete, but irreversible momentum builds toward systemic improvement. Change, once begun, creates its own momentum. At a major tech conference, a janitor approaches Jonas with tears in his eyes. "You changed everything for people like us." 1 year later, Jonas walks through Pinnacle headquarters, his name now restored to the building's exterior after years of absence. Employees of all backgrounds collaborate in open workspaces designed for both productivity and inclusion. The atmosphere feels noticeably different, energized, yet calmer, ambitious, yet ethical. Jonas pauses at the innovation department, now led by Jamal Washington, the young black man Richard had relegated to janitorial work despite his MBA and technical expertise. Jamal's team has just launched a new integrated communications platform that became the company's fastest-growing revenue stream within months. The market response exceeded even our optimistic projections, Jamal explains as they review performance metrics. "We're seeing particularly strong adoption in international markets." "Your perspective on cross-cultural communication needs made the difference," Jonas observes. "Sometimes our greatest innovations come from experiences traditional leadership might never have." Jamal nods. "My grandmother in Nigeria was my first beta tester. Her feedback reshaped our entire interface approach." Jonas continues his walkthrough, stopping occasionally to engage with employees at all levels. Despite his restored executive status, he still dons the janitor's uniform monthly to clean alongside the maintenance staff. "Leadership should understand every job in the building," he explains to a puzzled new hire who recognizes him emptying trash bins. "No role is beneath anyone, and every role contributes essential value." This philosophy permeates the renewed corporate culture. Executives regularly participate in frontline operations. Customer service insights directly influence product development. The rigid hierarchy that enabled Richard's toxic leadership has transformed into a collaborative ecosystem where merit and impact matter more than title or background. Victoria serves as an advisor rather than executive, helping other companies implement cultural reforms. Her journey from complicity to advocacy becomes a business school case study in ethical leadership and redemption. "My greatest failure became my most important education," she tells students. "I learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it." Diane's diversity initiatives attract global attention. Government agencies and multinational corporations send representatives to study her methodologies. She mentors former victims of discrimination who now hold leadership positions throughout the industry. "The metrics tell a compelling story," she explains during a presentation to visiting executives. "Inclusive environments consistently outperform homogeneous ones on innovation, problem-solving, and market responsiveness." Gerald Westfield and Jonas form a personal friendship beyond their business relationship. Their merged company receives the Most Equitable Workplace Award for 2 consecutive years. "We've proven that ethical leadership and market performance aren't competing priorities. They're complementary strengths," Gerald notes during the acceptance speech, Jonas nodding beside him. Richard Connell eventually relocates to a smaller market overseas, his influence in Silicon Valley permanently diminished. His cautionary tale appears in business ethics curricula nationwide. The industry transformation continues unevenly but persistently. Companies that embrace authentic inclusion outperform their peers consistently enough that market forces begin driving change alongside ethical considerations. Shareholders increasingly demand cultural metrics alongside financial projections. As evening falls, Jonas stands in his office, once Richard's, now redesigned with warm wood tones and family photos replacing cold glass and status symbols. He studies a photograph of himself as a young entrepreneur facing early discrimination from investors who couldn't see past his skin color. A knock interrupts his reflection. The evening janitor enters to empty trash bins. "Don't get up, Mr. Harvey," the man says. "I'll be quick." "Actually," Jonas rises to help, explaining to his confused assistant in the doorway, "no one is above any job, and no job defines anyone's worth." Together they collect the day's discarded papers, founder and janitor, roles separated by circumstance but not by inherent value. True power isn't measured by who you can put down, but by who you choose to lift up. The story you just witnessed isn't just fiction. It reflects realities in workplaces everywhere. Discrimination doesn't just hurt individuals, it damages companies, innovations, and ultimately society. The incidents portrayed here happen daily in boardrooms, offices, and corridors of power across industries. Jonas Harvey's journey from founder to janitor to reformer illustrates how perspective changes everything. His willingness to experience his company's culture firsthand revealed truths that reports and metrics could never capture. Sometimes, the most powerful insights come from stepping out of privilege and into vulnerability. Richard Connell represents a leadership approach that remains all too common, measuring success solely through profit while dismissing the human costs of toxic culture. His downfall wasn't simply karmic justice, but the natural consequence of unsustainable practices that ultimately threatened the very shareholder value he claimed to protect. Have you ever witnessed workplace discrimination? Share your story. Remember that diversity isn't a compliance checkbox, but a competitive advantage. Companies with inclusive cultures consistently outperform their homogeneous counterparts in innovation, problem-solving, and market responsiveness. The business case for inclusion proves as compelling as the moral imperative. Tag someone who needs to see that standing up for what's right is always worth it. Share this story with colleagues navigating similar challenges or leaders shaping workplace culture. Sometimes a narrative communicates what statistics alone cannot. Subscribe to Beat Stories for more stories of everyday heroes creating extraordinary transformations in their communities.